it's interesting that we're coming in here talking right after the Magic win, because had it been before the Magic win, or had they played similarly on a particular side of the ball, had as they had in the previous 3 or 4 weeks, we would have been jumping right into the defensive struggles for this team, which I still think is probably not going away. I don't think one game shores up that the defensive struggles are fixed. Just like I don't think one good game from Chimezie Metu is a reason to believe that he sealed up the backup center role. So even as they played very, very well, they played I guess very well relative to how they were playing in terms of paint defense. In the Magic game, they got off to kind of a rough start at first, but you saw them come together and kind of shore up a lot of the mistakes that they had been making in terms of timing and actual effort and getting over to help and things like that. But before that, before that, it seemed like all those things were lacking. They were not tight on all those things. And it's not like they were 100% tight again on Monday, but it was much better. And I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, might have been at the beginning of December, or the end of November. I think it might have been after that Phoenix loss, because we lost. We watched them lose off of a offensive rebound that was gathered by, I don't remember who it was on the Suns.
Torrey Craig, I believe.
Yeah, there you go. Great memory.
Thanks.
And that ended up essentially sealing the loss for the Kings on their home floor. And rebounding had become, it was kind of I think the amount of offensive rebounds that they allowed were kind of going in the wrong direction at that point. When they had started off at the season, one of the best teams in terms of defensive rebounding percentage and limiting offensive rebounds to their opponents. And it just seemed like didn't really have much to do with them not having the ability. Clearly they had the ability, but in kind of taking the time to go back and watch, like even in that game, if you just go back and watch each of the, whatever, 10, 11, 12, however many Phoenix Suns offensive rebounds there were, if you watch a lot of them, it's just like kind of just guys had just taken their foot off the gas in terms of being tight and those kind of like doing those little things, I guess, is probably how Mike Brown would say it. And I think that a lot of that went into the defense as well, because it's just like there's just too many times where you'd see, like, you didn't have to even really know anything about basketball. You'd just be watching Kings basketball and they're playing defense, and the other team's just getting free lanes to the rim. And in a similar light, and again, I don't know if I'm 100% on this. I don't know everything. I'm not a basketball expert per se. But from what I see, it seemed like they were just on top of that. Mike Brown talks about defense, being more about timing, getting your work done early, anticipating things. And that just takes a different level of alertness, both physically and mentally, that maybe lacks after a couple of weeks or a couple of months into the season. And you just need to kind of fine tune it again. And maybe that happened. Mike Brown was very happy that they applied the lessons that he felt the lessons from tape and drilling and practicing over the last 2 days before the game. He was happy that they had applied it. So maybe they just needed to kind of get the frequency back on a little bit and kind of have that refresher. I mean, you see it in little microcosms. You see it. Malik Monk gets a game off. He comes back. I think his first score of the game, he had a springy as hell dunk off of 2 feet on a cut. And you just see what like little things like that do. And I think it's just a matter of kind of getting that, I guess, like tuning it back up, as it were.
Yeah. And talking about that paint defense, it was really nice to see them have a bounce back game against the Magic, just because, I mean, in that first contest against the Magic, I think they scored like in the 80s in paint points. And correct me if
78.
I'm wrong. 78,
Yeah, 78.
So almost 80, yeah. So they almost cut their paint points down in half because they kept it to 42 on Monday night. But yeah, it was just nice to see them, against a team that had just destroyed him in the paint. and especially how bad they had been playing paint defense over the last couple weeks, like they could have that bounce back game against a team that can't score in the paint. So again, it is the Magic still, though, a team that is 15 and
Exactly.
26. But
And it's not like they dominate in the paint either. I think they average like 48 and a half points, like right in the middle of the pack in terms of
okay,
paint points. They're just a bigger team, right?
yeah, they are. But
But that was it was exactly what you wanted to see in terms of defense. And I just think that, I mean, defense is probably the hardest thing. It's just like it's one of those things that you constantly have to put an effort, constant effort into being kind of like an effective member of being on the string and even an individual defender. But really, it's that first one that matters the most. Um, and I just think it seems like in the process of kind of learning how to be a winning team, which is still what they're kind of doing. They are a winning team. They're fifth in the West right now, still. So, but they're still trying to learn to be a contender, I guess. So, and you hear Mike Brown say it. I think he said it really well when he was talking about, I think it might have been ahead of the game in Orlando or maybe after the game, the loss to the Lakers. Because that was a perfect example of the defense being horrible. We can't neglect to mention that. They gave up, 136 points? And talk about guys having open lanes to the rim just constantly. Must have been a fun game to go to, though, if you were just kind of like there for this, just like you're not like a casual. If you're just a casual basketball fan, that would have been a good game to go to. That'd have been
yeah, honestly, a game, yeah, it's crazy.
a good one to take your mom to. And but I think Mike Brown said something to the effect. It's just like, you can maybe get away with just trying to outscore your opponents, but you're just not going to be able to do that in the playoffs. And again, that's the big goal here. I mean, we're starting to talk about it. It's not. That's just the reality of it. This is as it's projected right now. If this playoff started today, they're a playoff team. You have to start acting like it, and winning at home, rebounding, all these other things matter. But it's like defense probably comes first. It's probably the most important thing. Everything else is contingent on it. So, well, again, it's one game. I don't know if that's necessarily just fixed like that. Would you say it's fixed? Are you confident that that's it? We're not going to be talking about the defense anymore.
No,
I remember
of
after
course not.
remember the first win against Cleveland, it seemed like that kind of felt like they had just turned it on all of a sudden. They had the stops late in the game to win it. But they were kind of playing good defense in the games before that, if I'm not mistaken. This, I just feel like, just flip on the light and it's fixed. You don't anticipate that either?
No, of course not. It's just not that simple, really, and especially with, of course, the past couple weeks, it hasn't really been that great. So no, one game isn't going to convince me. But hopefully they start trending in the other direction from what they had been doing over the last couple of games. So maybe it's a good starting point, and they can continue in that trend. But like you said, I think it's going to be up and down throughout the season. We're almost at the midway point in the season. Hopefully they can get it back on track, kind of like how it was during that winning streak they had earlier this year. But then again, it's going to be poor again. And that's just kind of how the Kings are. None of us are expecting them to be like a top 10 defensive team. That would be great. But I think most of us are thinking around the middle of the pack, 15 to 20, right, for defensive rating. So I don't know where they are exactly at this moment, but yeah, I just think it kind of comes with the territory of being one of those teams. You're not going to be the best all the time, but you're going to have some good stretches. But you're also going to have some poor stretches as well. But not like how they had been the last 16 years, where it's not even just a poor stretch. It's just poor defense all season.
Yeah, I guess not to kind of like stick on the silver. If we really wanted to stick on the silver lining, we'd say that, oh, wow, yeah, the defense is figured out. But, the big difference, obviously, between this team and, more recent years, the teams of more recent years, is the fact that like you can tell that it's bothering these guys that they're not playing good defense. You can tell that there's an effort there to change it. There's no like pervading hopelessness going on there, you know.